collaborate with each other. But I think there is a lot of quite a lot of misunderstanding of like who does what, and what exactly are those guys are doing. And usually everyone's just so stuck in their jobs and like overwhelmed and stretched that you just don't have like time or mental capacity to really figure out what this person even is talking about, right? So I think being like really transparent, somehow concise, right? And also understanding way better what this other person might care about and bringing that exact thing, I think.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for joining the episode today.
Hi Tracy, it's nice to be here.
Yeah, of course. So I noticed the other day you have Growth PM in your LinkedIn headline. And I've personally been asked so many times, what is a Growth PM? I don't know if it's like region specific, this language, but I know you also identify as a CRO and experimentation consultant like myself. So please, like, demystify the Growth PM. What is a Growth PM? How is it different from an experimenter or just a product manager?
All right, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first time I learned or like heard about this term, it was or still is an article on Reforge, talking about the growing specialization of product managers. That the job is on the market for quite a while, and people started kind of going into all these different direction, and that they in fact they exist, right? So not all PMs are created equal, and not all product management jobs are equal. And so how this article describes kind of the growth work, right, is more something that creates and captures value by capturing more of the existing market,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when we look at all the different, so there, let's say there are core PMs that are actually developing feature of a product. But then as a growth PM, you are rather a person that before this feature is even built, you're asking the question, well, how are customers supposed to know that it's there? How they're supposed to find it? How their journey is looking like to be using this feature, right? And usually you're working with the users, let's say, or customers that are already there.
Mm-hmm.
and and this job in general is it has a lot of overlap with CRO. Is very heavily based on rapid experimentation, on doing a lot of user research and understanding user needs, right? And but the main thing is that you're not so much developing new features as much as you're kind of making sure that the ones that are already there actually get the usage and get noticed. So
Totally.
I think, yeah, that's like a brief explanation, I would say.
Awesome. And as like in a past life, someone who did identify as growth PM, there was always this idea of a growth PM focuses on like a very specific metric, whereas a product manager is focusing on shipping, releases, all of these other kinds of like features. Is it fair to say that a growth PM is a little bit more metric oriented?
Well, I mean, you would find it normally in product companies, all of the PMs would be metrics oriented
Mm-hmm.
in one way or the other. I think where the difference might be is that a growth PM is close to CRO folks in that they're usually working on commercial metrics, right? They're really caring about um, the commercial KPIs, like, I don't know, revenue or conversions or something like that. Well, let's say a PM that's developing a feature that might not be directly connected to any of the P&L, kind of they might be just caring about, yeah, how many people use this or how long they stayed on the page or use this feature. There could be metrics that are not exactly commercial, right? So I think that's the biggest difference. And some PM work for sure, like platform PMs, might not really care about many metrics. They might have some KPIs, but growth PMs are definitely usually have some sort of commercial metric in mind that they are working on to improve.
Yeah. I'll also, I will bet that you accidentally fell into what you were doing too. So, as far as like CRO, experimentation, growth PM, whatever you want to call it, how did you start this? How did you get on this path? And yeah, like what can someone who's listening to this do to kind of follow in your footsteps as well?
Yeah, sure. So I've been doing product management for quite a while. I started in 2011, and I've done like a lot of very different companies, both B2B and B2C, and very different business models. And I think I was at the time working, I think for like a neo bank,
Mm.
and I was building like some very core features, and it was fairly complex, right? And usually very technical. Like you spend a lot of time with developers, like really building these features. And then after that, I thought that I want something different, and I was working with a company called Urban Sports Club, which is very well known in Berlin, and this one is a subscription service around sports, and I was responsible there for like user acquisition, right? So for the whole funnel and the
Hmm.
journey and the home pages and the landing pages and the registration flow, but also for like the prices and the packaging and the value proposition, all that, right? And I felt like this is something I would like to do, so I specifically went to find this kind of job, and I knew enough to get it, right?
Hmm.
Hi, this is Romo Santiago from Experiment Nation. If you'd like to connect with hundreds of experimenters from around the world, consider joining our Slack channel. You can find the link in the description. Now back to the episode.
And then from doing that, eventually, when I get the opportunity to do CRO, I thought, well, this is even further on this journey of working a lot with this kind of concepts, right? Like working way more with data, like optimizing journeys, optimizing flows, and things like that. So
Hmm.
I guess if someone would like to go this way, I would say that the first thing is to be really knowledgeable about the business model, because I tend to see, and there's right now a lot of chat about it in the product management community, that a lot of product managers are not really that business savvy, and that they
Hmm.
operate very far from the P&L of the company, from real like commercial side of things, and that they deliver features and they don't really like know how these features are supposed to contribute to the business.
Hmm.
So I think knowing the business side of things is very important. How your company is making money, what are the costs, right? Where can you like improve things to be improving that? This knowledge, I think, is crucial, right? And then it definitely requires more knowledge around data and knowing your way through like analytical tools and being able to look at things and understand what they tell you. Like it's great to have good, business analysts or data analysts working with you, but to be truly effective, I think you really need to be fairly familiar with those tools.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, all these practices of like how to conduct user research, how to conduct experiments, this is all invaluable, I think, to be doing growth PMing or CRO for that matter. Of course, that's like the core, the
Yeah.
core part of the job,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, I think you can go into this from many functions, right? But you need to, of course, learn those concepts because they are central to this
Yeah.
job.
Absolutely. And we talk about this a lot as experimenters, this curiosity. And I see that in your answer where, you were doing something and then you were looking at the full picture. You weren't just looking at how can I just funnel as many people to this one page as possible? Like, how can I actually impact real metrics that drive some sort of measurable outcome and an important outcome? Did you ever do any sort of work with paid acquisition or just like very top of funnel work before you got
Mhm.
into the more of the conversion side?
This is a very good question, and I will answer a little bit extra to
Okay.
that. So no, I personally didn't ever worked at marketing, but even from the very first PM jobs that I got, they were in some way connected because it was direct to consumer brands that did paid marketing, and so I was well aware of the concepts, and how it works. And then it's only later that I realized that it's intrinsically connected, to this whole thing, that you can't just ignore those parts of the funnel that are not that you're not directly responsible for, but you really
Hmm.
need to look holistically. And I think I was at some point writing an article trying to explain what's the difference in between growth PMing and CRO, and I spent a whole day just to in the end to write, actually there is not there is not much difference if we're speaking about good, like quality CRO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's the real kind of practical difference, is that as a growth PM, you have to look at things holistically. You have to understand the whole journey, and to either yourself improve all of it, or ensure that people that are responsible are connected, are talking to each other, communicating and participating in all this. And only then it actually works, right? Because you can't just ignore
Yeah.
that part. Oh, that's after registration, so it's another team, I'm not going to touch it, and this is this is marketing, it's not my job. Then it's just like not working.
Yeah.
And growth PM is supposed to be either working on it or connecting people that do it. While CRO folks, some at least, right? Sometimes, okay, this is just this page, just this landing page that we're improving, and that's it. We don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
Then there is a big difference.
Yeah.
When we're speaking of like real good quality CRO, then it's like it's super close. It's all the same thing. You can't ignore, marketing. You can't ignore what happens later. You really have to be optimizing, having this holistic view.
Yes. Yes. I've dealt with this exact issue so many times, especially with web apps where, you have the marketing team and you have the product team. They are totally separate from each other. You have maybe a few people on the leadership team who connect with each other, but you have the marketing team who's like, okay, I can send all this traffic your way. I can run all these ads that perform, but I can't influence what's going on in the web app. That's for the product team. So you have this one half of the team that feels like their hands are tied. They can't influence much. All they can do is influence that first step. And then you probably have the product team who's like, well, maybe marketing shouldn't be funneling all this shitty traffic our way if it doesn't perform. Have you encountered this, and how do you move past this if you have?
Yeah, sure. It definitely happened, right? And interestingly enough, it happens sometimes in both small and big orgs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Still, people could be sitting at the same floor and still not talk to each other, right?
Yeah.
So, like, usually when I've dealt with it, I usually was through just facilitating the actual conversation, or I was one of the sides responsible, and I was a good communicator enough to actually define this connection. But recently, I was just thinking a lot about this thing, and connecting it to this chat or these talks in the product community that I mentioned. It actually even happens now in the UX, like in designer community, and even in research, user research community, where everyone is saying like, we all of us should be much closer to P&L and commercial metrics and be kind of commercially minded, because otherwise you can't explain why are you even, why you should exist in this company. And people are like fearful for their jobs, their layoffs. And of course, if you can't explain, well, how are your activities making money for the company, then sure, you can get scared about it. And so this is what I was thinking that could kind of breach these silos, is that when all of the teams have some commercial goals and know how they contribute to it, but we know that you can't really get it without others, right?
Yeah.
You can't just do your stuff and then say, well, we earned money, because first the like users or customers should be coming from sales or marketing, and then something happens later down the road. So I think when everyone has like this sort of, the commercial goals could be this thread that sort of connects all these teams, and where everyone finally understands, well, okay, we can't really make this happen without everyone else, right? And if we want to reach our goals, we have to like somehow start working with those guys and those over there.
Yeah.
And I think this is the way. I haven't done it yet, but it's more of a theory. It's a hypothesis of mine that that I'm piecing together, looking at all these like scattered
Yeah.
pieces of information.
And it's such a unnatural almost talent that you have to have in a position like yours, where you have to be able to take the agendas and the needs of all of these different people, and oftentimes those agendas and those needs are competing, but you still have to be able to find that like common goal, that common thread that makes everyone like be on board with what you're trying to do, ultimately getting everyone to be around the same shared goal.
Yeah, and if it's not, if it's not a financial success of your company and securing everyone's salaries, then what could be? What's more?
Like, what's the incentive
Yeah,
oftentimes? Yeah. You want everyone to look good too. And I don't know about you, but for me, the thing that I found most effective to rally marketing and product, all of these other different teams together, is as soon as I show them what the customer is saying, what the user is saying, what the frustrated visitor is saying, that's when I've noticed things start to click. It's pulling out the quotes from research. It's showing the heat maps, the screen recordings. Have you found that to be particularly effective?
in a way, of course. I mean, the best way to make someone your friend is to clearly show them how
Yeah.
you generate value for them, how
Yeah.
you can help, right? So yeah, of course. This I think sort of already veers into a different area of our discussion, right? Still a difference between CRO and product managers,
Yeah.
and how they can collaborate with each other. But I think there is a lot of quite a lot of misunderstanding of like who does what, and what exactly are those guys are doing. And usually everyone's just so stuck in their jobs and like overwhelmed and stretched that you just don't have like time or mental capacity to really figure out what this person even is talking about, right?
Yes.
So I think being like really transparent, somehow concise, right, and also understanding way better what this other person might care about and bringing that exact thing, I think, yeah, should
Yeah.
help quite a bit.
Yeah. How do CROs better work with PMs? This is something that I've always struggled with personally. I've never really struggled with designers or performance marketers, but as soon as I get in front of the product team, I don't know what it is. This is where I struggle. How do you get better at that?
Sure. Well, I think the CROs might get quite a few things wrong about the PMs, right? They're usually what people miss is this like sheer complexity of this job. Like everyone's job is complex, but so far I haven't met many PMs that are not constantly like burnt out, completely overstretched, and just like hating their life. To be fair,
Yeah.
right? It's most of the people I've met and I've worked in many product teams were like that. It's sort of bad, but also it is what it is.
Yeah.
So very often, what I guess CROs might be missing is this whole like forest of blockers that like your typical PM is facing every day to just do their job. When I started doing CRO, it was so liberating. It was insane, because you have, and we were doing like the DOM manipulation, very optimizedly. You can do like, yeah, it is, there are limitations, but generally, like, what it's possible, you can just do it. You don't
Yeah.
need anyone. You need your front end developer to just do it most of the time. And if someone like some stakeholders may be saying, "Oh, are you sure? What about this?" You're like, "Hey, it's just an experiment. We'll shut it down in 2 weeks anyway.
Yeah.
So, who cares?" And I had a great PM when I started doing it, who was basically covering all my stuff. He was always just saying exactly that to all the stakeholders. But that's not always like this, right? And the PMs then constantly face all things about like legal and customer support and maybe marketing and other
Yeah.
stakeholders constantly nagging and asking or saying, no, you can't do this because you will break this workflow for us, or you will change, have you considered this? So I think for the CRO to understand that our jobs very often, like the complexity lays in a different place usually, right? That
Yeah.
this person that you're coming and trying to, like, I don't know, get something to happen is most probably just facing a whole load of issues. And unless you're clearly showing, how you are helping with this, that you're doing not something for you, you're actually doing something for them,
Yes.
it's sometimes very hard for them to justify. PMs are very often viewed as like a gatekeepers.
Yes.
A person that just says no to everyone.
Yes.
Again, I think like so many PMs are really aspiring to be these people from like Marty Kagan's books, but the reality is very often just tells you that it's impossible, right? And like there are so many people that would like to do way more user research and experiment, and like really drive value and do impact. But then every day you're just churning through
Yes.
insane amount of inbound requests and people asking,
Yes.
and then stakeholders demanding something to happen, and delivery deadlines and technical complications, things like that. So
Yes.
yeah, I think that like if you can remove as much of that for the PM you're working with, right, to think for yourself, or maybe even to reach out yourself to some of those stakeholders and figure out, okay, could there be potential questions, let's say, about our test that you need the product team to run, and you figure this out in advance, and you come and you say, hey, I already checked with this person, that person, they're like, we figured it out, it's all sorted, you don't have to do anything, right? That this really increases your chances of the respective PM saying, oh, you did this, cool. They would probably cry in the evening, like just
Yes.
someone did something nice for me.
Totally. I've met so many PMs in my time, and like they are some of the most miserable people that I've met, not because they're just miserable by default, but because they have all these pressures and demands from all these different directions. And this is actually a very similar conversation to an episode that we recorded on this channel like 2 weeks ago, but it was with a customer support lead.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of similar themes here where it's like the CRO or the experimenter can help by providing information, just lifting some weight off of their other team members' shoulders. And I would like to carry that forward into my practice when I'm working with PMs, because I know that there are a lot of constraints. There are a lot of just pressures that I don't see and I can definitely support with if I was just involved. So is it fair to say that the experimenter or the CRO, they have a responsibility to inject themselves into the conversation?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a responsibility, right? It would definitely help, for
Mm-hmm.
sure, right? Because to be fair, like very often CRO is stuck in more like, well, not stuck, but placed in the marketing org, right? And might be viewed like, who are you and what are you doing here, by the product team. It really depends on the company. But to at least reach out and show that, hey, I'm willing to understand much better what's happening on your side, and to really kind of prioritize and tailor some of my work at least
Yes.
to be very helpful for you folks, right?
Yes.
And that you do some proactive steps to actually get there. This would really help, right? So I guess if you really want to be good in your org, the effectiveness of your job depends on your collaboration with the product team, then yes, it is your responsibility,
Yes.
right? Because again, remembering that this PM, they might know that, okay, that's maybe also their responsibility, but that's just one out of like 100, and so they might just not have the energy to actually do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So then it sounds like you went from PM to CRO. How do you do the
Yep.
opposite? How do you go from CRO to PM?
Haha.
I don't know why someone would
Sure.
want to, because being a PM is very difficult, but if someone wanted to.
Look, I can find quite a few reasons. To be fair, there are downsides to being a CRO, right? So like one
Yeah.
of the few things that I was wrangling with when I started doing CRO, what first was that, well, I don't call all the shots anymore, right? I
Yeah.
actually had to ask a PM, hey, can we do this? What do you think about that? Could you ask the dev team, maybe help us with this one thing? Back in the day when I was a PM, and I wanted to do an experiment, I could just tell my dev team that, or set the priorities in a way where we would just do it, right?
Yeah.
So I think PMs just have a much broader also field of leverage, and things where you can just make things happen in comparison with a CRO. Sometimes, again, this is something that kind of separates the growth PMing from CROs, because growth PM is supposed to be able to do deeper changes, right? Sometimes you might be messing with backend, do some full stack tests, do deeper changes if they are necessary, while your normal CRO job would not expect this to happen, right? So there are benefits to go there, right? If you're willing. To do so, well, I mean, I think working as a CRO already covers quite a lot of ground, right?
Yeah.
So this whole area about like user research, understanding your customers, about data, understanding like metrics and commercial side of things and business models. This whole thing already covered. So I think what's lacking in this case is a much better, I guess, technical knowledge, kind of, because again, your things that will be working with as a PM could get very technical very fast, right? You might have to start like writing tickets for your dev team about certain like backend logics and features, how things should be working. Is, believe me, it's not sometimes like much more complex, of course, than what happens on the front end, or the complexity is just different, right? So you'd have to learn about that as well. Unfortunately, a lot of the PM job right now is still project management, right? So you literally kind of push things through and make things to get delivered. And those are not, an experiment that takes 3 days to deliver. Those could be months and months worth of development, right? So it's a challenge. And I think this is also something to learn. Like, okay, well, how do you collaborate with a big team of developers and QA people? And how do you make certain they understand like where we're going, how to do it, right? There's way more stakeholder management, of course. So yeah, I think this side of things, if you can kind of learn more about it and cover it, then you're good to go.
Awesome. Well, I feel enlightened. I hope that anyone who's listening to this also feels enlightened. And seriously, there's just so many different things to consider. There's so many different ways that you can carve this path for yourself, deciding which direction you do want to go into. So I really appreciate you sharing what worked for you, maybe what didn't work for you. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners about how they can go about either working better with PMs or become one themselves?
Sure. I mean, to be fair, again, knowing that our listeners are likely to be some of the CRO folk, right?
Yeah.
That for me, like I started doing CRO and I liked it so much. I really enjoy and still enjoy doing it, right? But on the other hand, it felt weird to abandon like 10 years of product management and like entirely just not do this anymore. So when I discovered that there is this specification, that is going on a little bit kind of within the product management industry, that you could just more specialize as a growth PM, right? And so you still apply majority of what you do in CRO, but then also you can apply your expertise if you were a PM before, or if that's something that you would like to learn and kind of develop into as just a CRO manager, right? Then you can do that. Because very often, like I would like to run experiments that are just impossible to do with the tools available, right? If I'd be officially a growth PM, I could do them, right? I would have developers and stuff. So you could do more interesting stuff. So I think this opportunity or this possibility to just kind of be a product manager, but sort of say, hey, I'm doing growth, right? So this is what I'm expect to be doing. If that's
Yeah.
like close to what you want me to be doing, cool. Then you go there. So I think this really makes it very appealing, or could make it very appealing to a lot of CRO folk.
That's great. Thank you. I saved the hardest questions for last. So get ready.
Okay.
Number one, who is your CRO hero? You weren't expecting
Ooh,
this one, were you?
yeah. Man, I like this might sound a bit kind of sus. I don't know. But I
Oh my
really
God.
I really, maybe not sus. Okay, maybe I didn't use the right word, but I like, to be fair, I actually really appreciate Ronnie Kohavi. Like he just like consistently there on LinkedIn calling out BS and like linking materials, and dissecting some of the stuff there. It's really cool. I think it's really important work he's doing. So I really, I don't know. I don't know. You could call him just a CRO guy. He was in experimentation for so long, but I think, yeah, as of now, he's really great.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I have like a personal CRO milestone. It's unspoken. It's My first Ronnie Kohavi teardown, the first time that he ever will shit on a post of mine will be a day that I go out to celebrate, because it just will open up my exposure to other people and a broader audience. So
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah. But to be fair, there are like really a lot of great folk. It's hard to choose, so
Totally.
this was the first one that I thought about.
Totally. And what is the first experiment that you've ever run? Can you remember your first?
Ooh, yeah, actually. I wasn't a CRO person back then. I was a product manager, but I had a CRO person in my team, and I really wanted to kind of do more of this. So it was a very simple one. It was like a registration slash subscription funnel for a subscription service, and we were asking like this address in the end, and it was completely unnecessary at that place. And like naturally, I was like, isn't more fields kind of prevents people from converting? Let's remove them. So we did. It improved nothing, like literally flat. which
Story
is
of my
when
life.
which is when I learned that, well, when it's a third step of conversion, the intent of the person is high enough to
Yes.
ignore these couple extra lines. It's not an effort for them anymore. And at least in this particular setup, it just didn't work at all. And we only messed up someone else that really needed this address later.
Yeah.
And they were like, where's the address? They're not the addresses. They're not coming in anymore. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, you tested it, you found out. And on that note, what is the most surprising test result that you've encountered?
Sure. Well, that was for like a marketplace where the nature of the products is fairly complex. And on the search result page, we tried to kind of make the cards look a bit more structured and have like, have a better structure and be less cluttered. And so we tried to work with like some of the product information that was there on the card, and it was just like there with commas, and we tried to put it in tags. It was a test with like 4 variations. I think we had to like tags, divide them by like these dots, and then one even where you could like scroll through. And we thought, well, just like visually this looks much better, and it like tanked hard. Everything. It was red ocean. I thought there was a bug. There's something wrong with tracking. It just can't go minus 10% on literally everything. We checked, triple checked, QA'd, reran the test, and it was just as red as the first time, and we were really at a loss to to understand why is this happening. So yeah, that was probably the most surprising. Not very positive test, but we were surprised indeed.
Yes. I've had many of those. I've also had the classic, oh my gosh, it's not performing well. There's got to be a bug. Immediately diving into screen recordings, trying to see like, oh my gosh, did it break? Did something go wrong? Sometimes our ideas are just not that great and we have to accept it.
Yeah. Doing CRO work really humbled me a lot.
Yes. I was going to say the exact same thing.
That's for sure. From my PMing times, I would more often say, yeah, I know exactly how this is supposed to work.
Yes.
Now I just never say this, like, because I don't.
Exactly.
I clearly don't.
Exactly. Well, I think that's a great thing. Lastly, hardest question of all of them. What do you have going on that you want our listeners to know about?
Yeah, sure. To be fair, I don't have that much or any specific thing, more that that I'm doing this right now as an independent consultant, and I'm just happy for anyone who needs or wants to start experimenting or to improve their current experimentation program, to reach out, and I would be happy to talk to them, to look at their ongoing things, and maybe there's a click and a match and we could do some great things together.
Great. And how can our listeners reach you?
Sure, you can find me on LinkedIn by my name, or maybe we will add a URL, or otherwise, I think LinkedIn is the best.
Awesome. Well, link will be in the show notes, but thank you so much for joining us, sharing what you learned along the way, some of your mistakes, learnings, lessons, all of that good stuff. And yeah, I hope to see you again on this show in the future, Tim.
Absolutely, Tracy. It was a pleasure. Really nice questions and very fun talking with you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, this is Romo Santiago from Experiment Nation. If you'd like to connect with hundreds of experimenters from around the world, consider joining our Slack channel. You can find the link in the description. Now back to the episode.